Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor, and I'm recording a little later, so I'm going to try to keep it down. Some people love episodes where I keep it down and I talk really quietly. But anyway, I think it's like a new modern thing. I can't remember what it's called, where you like talk really quietly into the mic and you can actually like hear people's like uh spit moving around in their mouth, or they eat really close to the mic or something. I don't know what that's called, but for those of you who are listening, you're probably shouting it out to to your digital device to tell me what it is, but I can't hear you. So anyway, I was working on a project because I'm always working on a project. And I don't know if I told you about the pill bottle that I'm upcycling, but this is probably going to be available for sale on my website once I increase my inventory of my upcycled stuff. But this is the first shot I've had at upcycling a pill bottle. So I have been holding on to this Walgreens pill bottle. I go through a lot of pill bottles. And for vitamins and prescriptions and the like. So, um, I was determined to figure out what to do with this, with a pill bottle that is something that people might want to buy, like at a craft fair or something like that, to promote my podcast and promote uh, our well-being, like recovery. So I finally figured out that I'm going to make a pill bottle into a tiny little uh, pot for plants, a tiny little pot. So I took a um, what is it called? I can't think of words today, but I made a little hole in the bottom of the pill bottle so there's drainage, because a pot needs drainage. And then I put the pill bottle in the lid so that if it drains, it's not going to damage whatever it's sitting on. And I painted a landscape on the pill bottle, and then I sealed it with an acrylic paint sealer, and then I put twine around the top with a little button, and here it is. Here is my pill bottle. It's kind of hard to see because the lighting's not great in here, but it is a lake with trees and mountains behind it, and it's all reflecting off of the water. And there's a cute little button, and see, Walgreens. Pretty impressive, I know. So I'll put that on my website on the upcycle page if you are interested in taking a look at it. And I've got another pill bottle in queue, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I enjoyed it, and that's really the first goal, is to make sure I find hobbies that I enjoy. And then I'd love it if people are interested in it. So I'm also going to post a picture of it on I have a couple upcycle Facebook groups. So we'll see what they think of it, but I like it. I think it turned out good. Okay. So shifting gears here, a little reminder about what our July book, of the month is, and it's called Educated, a memoir by Tara Westover. So you can find that on Audible. I only ever choose books that I can listen to on Audible. And the July Listener Challenge, which I am happy to remind you of every podcast episode because I really like this one. And this is saying hello to a stranger every day. So those are what we're going to be doing this month. And today I want to talk about the impact of supportive employers. on the early stages of an employee that is entering sobriety or is not entering sobriety, struggling to enter sobriety. Both of my meetings this morning discussed this chapter from the Alcoholics Anonymous big book called To the Employer. So I thought, well, all signs are pointing to it, and I'm going to talk about this. So, first, I want to share a bit about my own experience working with different employers during my recovery um, challenges in the early stages of me needing and seeking help. Um, so I want to share with you how the support or lack thereof of two of my previous employers, one supported me, one did not, made a significant difference in my sobriety. Now, I'm not going to say my sobriety depended on that and that my sobriety was not successful the first time because of my employer. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just, I want to share with you how much more challenging it is when your employer is not on your side. Um, and not really celebrating you, actually. So when I first decided that I needed to get sober, this employer had been impacted by my poor choices, by my disease. So I was working for an employer that um, that had actually bought a family business. So I was, after my brother and my dad retired, I was left to work for this company that purchased our family company. So I once my dad and my brother left, I had a really, really difficult time emotionally, dealing with them leaving. I felt like I had been abandoned. That's what I felt like. That was what was going on the inside of me. Um, and I was upset about it, but I wasn't angry with them. At least I wasn't choosing anger because I knew that it was an opportunity for them. And so I feel like, yeah, I would have done the same thing. I would have left if I could have, made money like that and so on and so forth. But when this happened, I was in active alcoholism. And so I felt more alone than ever during this time. Um, so when I started needing to change my flight pattern from going to see my brother quarterly to going to see the headquarters of this other very large company quarterly, it was very difficult for me. When I would go out to the family business out where my brother did live, he wasn't there anymore. And it was devastating, honestly. It was devastating for me. And so I was drinking more and I didn't show up to work. I travel all the way across the United States and I would drink too much, oversleep, and not show up to work. And there was a lot going on. It wasn't just that I had an addiction, but it was that I was severely depressed. And you know how I have that an abandonment issue? I've talked about it. Well, this was like full on my fear. I was living in it. So, I ended up going to detox just to fast forward. Um, I went to detox, and when I came out, my employer decided that I either needed to move to the headquarters, either on the West Coast or in the northern United States, or they were going to give me a severance package. And well, honestly, I believe they knew that I wasn't going to move. So I took the severance package. It was really a no-brainer for me. But the problem was that I was a risk to them, and I knew that, and they knew that. Um, but I felt like, again, that I was just abandoned, that I didn't have any support. So not only was I fighting a disease that was growing inside of me, I lost my job, and I had actually sought help. I had actually decided I was gonna try to get clean and turn my life around. And what happened, the reaction of my employer was, okay, well, good luck to you. There was never any sort of conversation about it or anything. At least that is my memory of it. And that's important to say, that that is my memory of it, because after I left that job, I um I started drinking again. And what I was thinking in my head was, I'm never going to be able to do this for the rest of my life, so I might as well just start now. Start drinking again now. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't hesitate. So I think I had stopped drinking for about 2 months after detox. And then I started drinking again because I couldn't live one day at a time. I just kept thinking about the rest of my life and having to stay sober for the rest of my life. So I just started, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna succeed, so I might as well start now. So I ended up getting a new job, thankfully, after about, I think it was about 4 months. It was right to the point where my severance package was running out. And I got a new job, and I started at a company that I had zero experience in the industry, but I had full experience in what they were hiring me for. And I felt extremely confident about what they were hiring me for. So I got started, and it turned out that, I thought things would be like it used to be, where I used to drive into work um, and drink when I got home from work, at 5 o'clock. And that's not what happened. Um, I started out that way, but this company was a smaller company. So there was alcohol in the refrigerators that people, reasonable drinkers, would indulge in one, or, half a glass of wine or something like that after hours. Um, so I decided to stay one of the evenings, or else they opened a bottle of wine, and I thought, well, nobody here knows my past. Nobody knows that I'm an alcoholic. Nobody knows that I went to detox or anything. So I knew it was the wrong choice, but I said, yeah, I'll have a glass. Well, I can't have just one. So I had two glasses, and I had to drive home to Charlestown, and I was not disappointed in myself. No, no, no. I felt so good from that wine and being able to drink with other people and not hide it, that it was a memorable evening for me. I felt like I enjoyed myself. But I was off to the races at that point. It was difficult for me to ignore the alcohol in the refrigerator all day long. So, what I ended up doing was bringing my alcohol in with me in the morning, and I would drink um, at the office. Um, there were people that would have a drink at 3 o'clock. So, I would have a drink at 3 o'clock. I just didn't tell anybody. Um, And again, it continued to grow and grow until I was drinking all day again at this job, at a job where I actually had to drive an hour and a half to work and an hour and a half home. Um, I would drink all day. I found a way, and I probably endangered many lives, including my own, doing that. When I finally reached out to a coworker, um, I was intoxicated and I told them that I was an alcoholic and I needed help. And I really didn't even know what I was doing at the time. I was three sheets to the wind, probably. And I came in the next day and HR called me into their office. His office, HR was a him. And I went in there and he was asking me how I was doing, and I was definitely hungover. Um, I I knew why I was there, but he wasn't saying anything to me. He was waiting for me to tell him the same thing that I told my coworker, that I was an alcoholic and I needed help. And finally, after he just kind of kept asking me questions, and finally I said, I know what you want me to say. He's like, I don't want you to say anything. I want you to want to tell me. And so I said, I'm an alcoholic and I need help. And that was the beginning of this sobriety. And that was 8 years ago in April. And not only did that employee do the right thing and tell HR, the HR did the right thing and started a conversation with me in a very gentle way, in a gentle way that I felt supported. I felt I was being heard, and I felt like I wasn't going to get in trouble. I was embarrassed, probably more than anything. So I went back to detox, and one of the problems I remember is I was so drunk during this time that I didn't remember what my conversation specifically was about going to detox, whether it was okay with them for me to be leaving for a week to go to detox. Apparently, I had had that conversation and everything was okay. But I believe that I may have called them or somebody from the detox place to tell them how long I was going to be there. I was just really nervous about losing my job again. And they said everything was okay. So at that time, I decided in detox I was going to do whatever it took to get sober. I was going to take every suggestion that I was given, because the first time I didn't. And that's what I did. And when I got back to work, I one of those suggestions was to go to IOP. So I'm leaning in as if I'm whispering to you guys, but um, so I I talked to my boss about if it was okay if I had a flexible schedule. What that meant is that I lived in Charlestown, so I had to get up and go into work at 6 o'clock. That meant that I had to get up at 4:30, leave at 5, because if you leave that early, it's only an hour drive, not an hour and a half drive. Shoo, am I right? So that saved a half an hour. That's how I like to look at it. But so I would get into work at 6. I was the first person in the building, and I would work until 10 o'clock, and then I would leave and go to IOP, which was in Leesburg. So that was about a half an hour away. So I would go there. That was 3 hours. So that was 10 to 1 o'clock. Then I would go. So I won't go into what IOP is, but it's like an outpatient learning experience for alcoholics to learn how to live sober. So I would go there until 1, and then I would drive back to work and get there at 1:30, and then I would work another 4 hours. So that would put me at work until about 5:30. Um, Sometimes I would leave at 5 so that I could get to back to Leesburg during my commute home and stop at Club 12, which is um, it's a facility where they have AA meetings and different sort of addiction meetings. So I would go to a meeting, so that's another hour, and then I would end up getting home an hour and a half later. So I'd get home at about 8 o'clock. So I was gone from 6 a.m. to 8 o'clock. And this took a toll on me. I was really, really tired. I just remember being so tired, but I was committed. I made a decision at the beginning of that sobriety, this sobriety that I'm in, that I was going to do whatever it took, and I was going to take all suggestions. And I turned my wanter off. And if you're going to do it, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no questions. You do it. You turn your wanter off and you do whatever it takes. And that's what I did. And that's why I'm sober today, because my company allowed me to and supported me so that I could be successful. If I was willing to do the work, they were not going to stand in my way. They were not going to hold up a single obstacle between me and my sobriety. And they didn't, not a single obstacle. Not only did they not hold up an obstacle between me and my sobriety, they sent me flowers when I finished my IOP. And I'm feeling very emotional about it because a lot has changed since then. And that's the job that I had to let go of at the beginning of this past year, because of my stroke and because of my symptoms and not being able to work anymore because of my head. And I'm forever grateful that they did what they did in order to help me. And they encouraged me to prioritize my health. They offered me an environment where I felt safe and I could discuss my recovery openly with my boss. And this support not only alleviated much of the stress I was carrying, but it also reinforced my commitment to staying sober. It made the difference for me. It made it for me. It was the difference between success and getting drunk. That's what my company gave me. They helped me get my life back. And it's important that I share that out loud. And I think this is the first time I've talked about the whole story from beginning to end. Um, this chapter to the employer in AA's big book is specifically written for employers to understand how to support employees who are struggling with alcoholism. The chapter begins by acknowledging the challenges employers face when dealing with employees who have a drinking problem. It emphasizes that alcoholism is a serious illness. It's not a moral failing, and it requires a compassionate and informed approach. The key points in the chapter are about recognizing the problem. It helps to learn how to recognize the signs of alcoholism and to also understand that it's a progressive disease. This awareness is the first step in providing appropriate support. And I believe that my previous employer had that awareness. It already existed. Approaching the employee is also, a very critical step. And it needs to be done with compassion, having a non-judgmental conversation focused on the employee's well-being and job performance. Employers are encouraged to offer support by providing resources such as access to counseling, treatment programs. One thing that I did from that point on was every HR director that came into our company, I would have a conversation with them and let them know that I am a recovering alcoholic and I wanted to break my anonymity, so that if there are any other employees that need help, that they can reach out to me, and I would be happy to have a conversation with an employee that might be suffering from alcoholism. And it's important for the employer to not punish the employee at this early stage. And I'll talk very briefly in the end um, about having accountability. I couldn't think of the word. So the chapter to the employer stresses the importance of creating a work environment that supports recovery. And that is including flexible hours for attending whatever medical support, meetings, or like outpatient therapy, like I needed to. And this creates this culture of understanding and support. Um, and then the chapter also talks about how to reintegrate employees who are returning to work after treatment, um, continuing the conversation, monitoring progress, providing ongoing support. It was so important to me that that employee, I don't know, it just happened this way, but the employee that I originally reached out to share that I was an alcoholic and I needed help, that employee became my boss and was my boss for the length of time that I worked there. And I'm truly blessed. I always smile when I say blessed because of our episode on that. But I'm blessed that I had somebody that was as dedicated to my sobriety as I was. And he provided me with ongoing support. He was there for me with empathy and understanding when we had team happy hours, company happy hours. I was really fortunate to have that, which is why I just get so emotional about it because it was really the perfect scenario of how an employer can take care of an employee. And I will, I mean, if I could shout it from the rooftops, I would. I wouldn't mind it, but I try not to talk about my company by name. So, if anybody is interested in talking to me about it for benefit of the company or giving them praise, I'd be happy to talk to you offline about who it is. So I'm sure you could figure it out. But reading this chapter or going to these two meetings today, this morning, reminded me of how crucial a supportive work environment is for someone in recovery, someone entering into recovery. And when employers take the time to understand alcoholism and offer support, they can make a positive, significant impact on an employee's life and really the overall workplace culture because that employee is going to be have a boost in morale, productivity, and loyalty. And that is going to be socialized within the company for sure. Whether that employee wants to break their anonymity like I did, or they don't, there's still going to be a boost of morale, productivity, and loyalty. And I'll tell you, that employee is probably going to be one of the hardest workers that you have because you supported their life. They gave them their life back or helped them get their own life back. So, having experienced both ends of the spectrum, I can't stress how much of a difference a supportive employer can make. It's not just making accommodations for the employee, it's fostering an environment where the employee feels valued, understood, and supported. And that environment, like I said, it aids uh, in the employee's recovery, but it also boosts that employee's morale, productivity, and loyalty. So here's the catch, okay? Because things like this are not easy. Alcoholism is a very complex disease. It is progressive and it wants you dead. So there are employees who need to experience the consequences of not making the decision to get sober and doing the work to stay sober. Now, in my first experience, I did make that decision and I went. I went to detox. I did the work and they let me go. Um, they didn't even give me a chance. So while support and compassion are vital, it's equally important for employers to set clear boundaries and expectations. I can understand if my employee would have set up these consequences had I repeatedly offended after I got help. Um, the consequences can serve as wake-up calls, and those help employees realize the severity of their situation and their need for change. There's a balance between supporting an employee and accountability. When employees understand that there are real consequences for repeated offenses and not showing any desire or attempt to change, they may be more motivated to take the necessary steps towards recovery, um, if they're given those consequences. This could mean facing disciplinary actions, loss of privileges, um, or even job termination if they fail to seek help and make progress. And these measures may seem harsh and they may seem like you're abandoning the employee, but just like family members get to a point where you're like, I don't know what else I can do. I can't continue to enable this person. It's the same thing. It's this point of enablement where you're no longer helping and being supportive, you're enabling. They're not going to understand that there are consequences to their behavior, um, unless they suffer them. And that can be crucial in prompting an individual to take their recovery seriously. I've seen it constantly, and it's not comfortable. And my heart goes out to an employer that has to do it, because the chapter talks about there are employers who have to let somebody go. And with this progressive fatal disease, sometimes things don't end well, and lives are lost. So it's serious business, you know. So what can we take from all of this chapter? My experience, strength, and hope. If you're an employer, if you're an employer, or you're in a position of leadership, I recommend taking the time to read To the Employer in AA's Big Book. Understand your role, because it can be pivotal in an employee's recovery journey. Approach the situation with empathy and provide the necessary support, and create an environment that fosters recovery and growth. And for those of us who are in recovery, remember that it's okay to seek out and ask for the support you need in the workplace. They have support systems in place for that. And it's more and more common now to have conversations about this type of uh, stuff, these invisible illnesses. They are acknowledged by our insurance companies, and they need to be acknowledged by us. Our health and our well-being come first. Without that, we don't have a job. You know, finding a supportive work environment makes a huge difference in your journey. And if you feel like you're in a company where you're not getting that kind of support, um, there are companies that give that kind of support. And I want my experience with that to prove that you don't have to be in a company that doesn't support your recovery, because it's life and death. It absolutely is life and death. So thank you so much for joining the Recovery Daily podcast today. Say hi to a stranger. Who did I say hi to today? I said hi to a neighbor's relative that I never met. So that's and she smiled, and that made me smile. And it was breezy outside and not sunny anymore because the sun was going down. And I said, if I close my eyes, I feel like I'm at the beach. And she laughed. That was my say hi to a stranger today. Thank you for joining me today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.